From blurry views of the universe to sharp, detailed photographs of stars and planets, it gave us a whole new vision of the galaxies. From camera, internet, and cell phone to combining them all in one handy package. It even changed the way we witness world events. From being a prisoner in your own body to operating a computer with just your thoughts, it created a new way for paralyzed people to communicate. They're all inventions of the 1990s, a decade defined by biotech, computer tech, and a world gone wireless. From the Hubble Telescope to the camera phone to the Mars Pathfinder landing system, they're all inventions that shook the world. The first photos from the world's most expensive telescope arrive, and they're all blurry. What the camera needs are some very clever eyeglasses, created by one ingenious space engineer. It's 1993 in Garching, Germany. Up until now, Jim Crocker's job has been a dream come true. Senior engineer on the Hubble Space Telescope project.
He wanted to help do whatever is necessary to get human beings into space, to explore the heavens. And Hubble was going to be exploring the heavens in a way that no one else had ever done it before.
For Earth-bound astronomers, looking at the stars has always been frustrating, like wearing eyeglasses with the wrong prescription.
It's fuzzy. It's out of focus. It's hard to see. The atmosphere blurs everything, and it makes things difficult to see sharply. And astronomers always complained about this. There's one astronomer who said, it would be great when I die to be sent, instead of heaven, to the moon and an observatory.
Getting a telescope up into space, free of the Earth's atmosphere, would solve all that. Construction of the Hubble Telescope began in 1970 and took 20 years. On April 24th, 1990, NASA's Space Shuttle Discovery carries the 12-ton telescope up into space. 600 kilometers above the Earth, the Hubble begins its circular orbit. Inside the telescope, a giant 2.5-meter mirror bounces light to a secondary one. That mirror focuses the light further and feeds it to 5 different devices. 2 cameras. The main one takes big pictures of whole galaxies. The other one takes telephoto images of single stars or planets. 2 spectrometers that convert the heat given off by distant objects into visible images. And 1 light meter that sets the exposure on the other 4 devices. Down below, everybody waits for the first fabulous photos to arrive. No one's more excited than Jim Crocker.
He'd be in the room when they got that first look at those stars and galaxies with glasses on, and that really was something appealing.
But when the images start to come in, everybody's hopes are dashed. They're fuzzy and indistinct, anything but crisp.
They were blur. They weren't seeing anything. It was junk. It was garbage. They didn't have a focused telescope. And no matter how much the engineers adjusted the primary mirror, they could not get focus. And this went on for 1 week, for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. They're going crazy. They cannot figure out why the telescope will not focus.
What they have is a disaster. 2 decades of work and $1 billion, potentially down the drain. NASA's very future is at stake. Jim Crocker's dream job has just turned into a nightmare. He's come to meetings here in Germany with world experts. They've figured out the problem with the telescope, and it's a doozy. It turns out the giant primary mirror for the Hubble wasn't built properly. The mirror is curved at the wrong angle, just enough to put everything out of focus.
This was probably the greatest possible disaster you could imagine for American astronomy. It was a pretty embarrassing failure, to be honest.
Even worse, now that the Hubble is up in space, the mirror can't be repaired. Bottom line, the solution has to be found elsewhere.
That if you could put mirrors in the light paths between the primary mirror and the instruments themselves, you could correct the prescription and fix the problem. But no one could come up with a way to get those mirrors into the light path.
Jim would love to be the one who comes up with a solution, but he's not feeling very creative right now, so he decides to take a shower. And it's in the European-style shower where he suddenly comes up with a great idea.
That shower head could slide up and down the bar, and then the shower head itself was on like an 8-inch long pivot. You could tilt it up, you could tilt it sideways, you could tilt it in 360-degree angles.
Jim thinks, what if we put a device into the telescope with pivot arms, just like the shower head, that would move the mirrors into place? Jim and his crew spend 3 years building CoStar, the unit that will hopefully refocus the astronomy instruments. CoStar is a big box, the size of a refrigerator and 3 times as heavy. Inside are 12 mirrors mounted on robotic arms. They'll work like adjustable contact lenses for the instruments in the Hubble. In December 1993, a NASA space shuttle takes CoStar up to the orbiting telescope. It takes 5 spacewalks in 5 days to complete the installation.
No mission ever by any nation had attempted to do this many spacewalks in such a condensed period of time. So it was one of the most challenging missions ever planned up until that moment.
Back on Earth, 2 weeks later, the astronomers wait for the first images to come in. There's a lot on the line, especially for Jim Crocker.
There's so much at stake, and the drama is so high. Everyone knows the possibility of being able to see the heavens sharply hinges on this repair.
The images arrive. They're sharp, they're crisp, they're perfect.
The reaction of the scientists was a mixture of unmitigated joy, unmeasurable relief that this was fixed and the telescope was now going to function as planned.
The Hubble Telescope has traveled more than 1.5 billion miles in over 20 years. In that time, astronomers have made hundreds of thousands of observations of the stars and galaxies. No question, our view of the universe is much clearer thanks to Jim Crocker and his clever CoStar. Other inventions of the decade? 1991. The World Wide Web, a giant pool of human knowledge suddenly available at the click of a button. The web took the internet out of institutions and into the home. That same year, the webcam, invented by some clever Cambridge students so they could monitor the coffee supply down the hall, now built into almost every computer on the planet. 1996. Genetic cloning. Hello, Dolly. This carbon copy of her mother raised alarms. If sheep can be cloned, could humans be far behind? Now, even the poorest people never have to be cut off from news, emergency alerts, vital information, thanks to a radio that runs on muscle power. No plugs, no batteries. All because of a British engineer with a heart who never throws anything away. One afternoon in 1991, Trevor Baylis turns on the telly and finds himself watching a documentary about the spread of AIDS in Africa.
They said the only way they could stop this dreadful disease cutting its way through Africa and many other places was with the power of radio or communication. Most of Africa didn't have electricity, and the only other form of electricity was in the form of batteries, which were horrendously expensive.
Like many people, Trevor wants to help. But unlike most, he may be able to do something about it. There isn't much this guy can't do. He's been a national champion swimmer, an acrobat, and even a stuntman. But he's also an engineer who's designed a whole line of special gizmos for people who are disabled.
I don't invent things simply only because of the money, you know. It's very often about the need, and need is the thing that tends to push me.
What's pushing Trevor right now is trying to help African people get the information they need. He starts thinking about a radio he could build for them that wouldn't cost a penny to run.
I'm thinking of my old gramophone with a handle on it, and I'm thinking to myself, look, if you can get all that noise by dragging a rusty nail around a piece of old Bakelite using a spring, surely there's enough power in that spring to drive a radio. Voila.
In his imagination, Trevor has just designed a radio that can be powered by cranking a handle like a gramophone. He has the perfect place to build a prototype, his workshop full of recycled junk.
I don't discard anything. I know it sounds daft, but if there's room for it, I'll keep it, you know. But it's part of my persona, I guess.
Trevor starts with an old transistor radio he just happens to have on hand. Now he needs a power source. No batteries allowed, but this little dynamo might do the trick. A dynamo is an electric motor run in reverse. If you turn the mechanism inside, electricity comes out. The best example is headlights on a bicycle. You pedal the bike to produce the power for the lights. Soon, Trevor's got the dynamo hooked up to the transistor radio. Now, he uses a hand drill to turn the dynamo, a temporary measure until he can design a crank to turn it. What comes out of his new invention is music to his ears.
By the time I found the solder and all the other bits and bobs, the wires, and actually did the work, half-hour top whack is what it took me to prove that my idea was a reality.
Now, all Trevor needs is a spring, one that will store the power once he's cranked the radio. The same kind of power a watch has after you wind it. He's got lots of springs, but he needs a constant force spring so his radio will run smoothly. Trevor is stumped, but not for long.
Just by chance, when I was climbing in the car, I put my seatbelt on. I thought, hang on, constant force. So I went to the breaker's yard and managed to get a constant force spring from them. Boom, boom.
The seatbelt spring turns Trevor's invention into a fully working wind-up radio. Crank it for 30 seconds and it plays for 14 minutes. Now he just needs to get the radio into production. Of course, that's the tough part. For 3 years, Trevor gets nothing but rejections from potential investors.
By this time I got the patent in hand, I went to everybody you could think of, right? And they all said no.
Many inventors would give up at this point. But the former daredevil showman gets a bold idea. Phone the BBC and sell them on how his wind-up radio could be a breakthrough invention for Africa. And the BBC bites.
Ironically, I went to the BBC World Service and they loved it. And then they passed me on to the BBC Tomorrow's World team And of course, they did a number, and woof, it really did go like clockwork in the sense that everybody went wild for it.
So you think there really is a market?
I think there's a tremendous market if it's marketed at an affordable price.
Best of all, two investors see the show and leap at the opportunity to buy in. Together with them, Trevor sets up a company in Cape Town, South Africa.
Terrific.
Soon, his radios are rolling off the factory production line. Finally, Trevor gets the recognition he deserves. An Order of the British Empire award. And a big thank you from his hero, Nelson Mandela. But the biggest honor is seeing his invention at work where it's needed.
When you see people out there dancing and leaping around because this is the first radio they've been able to have, and the fact that they didn't need a power line coming in from Ethiopia in order to run the thing. I mean, you know, it's a great honor, great privilege.
Thanks to inventor Trevor Baylis, millions of people around the world are a whole lot better informed. Other inventions of the decade. 1994, Bluetooth. The first wireless headsets make hands-free communication possible and spawn a generation of users who always look like they're talking to themselves. 1995, the GPS goes on the market. If you don't know how to get there from here, GPS has you covered, driving a car or flying a plane. 1996, Marv the robot. 1 cubic inch in total, the first glimmerings of nanotechnology. This mini robo-spy's sensors can detect chemical or biological weapons in some pretty tight spots. The man-machine connection, once only dreamt of, now makes it possible for paralyzed patients to control computers. All thanks to an Irish neuroscientist with a brilliant idea. It's 1997 at Emory University Hospital in Georgia.
No people response.
Philip Kennedy is examining patient Johnny Ray for the first time.
Can you squeeze tight?
Johnny had a stroke this year that left him paralyzed. His brain is working just fine, but his brain stem is dead. It no longer carries orders from his brain to the rest of his body. Now he has what doctors call locked-in syndrome.
Patient unresponsive.
Johnny can't move. He can't speak. All he can do is blink his eyes. He's a prisoner in his own body.
Locked-in syndrome is when an individual cannot move, cannot speak, but they're alert and intelligent.
Kennedy's been trying to help locked-in patients for the past 30 years. When he was a med student, he met a polio victim who changed his life.
He was totally bright, awake, alert, smart guy, couldn't move. I found it very traumatic. And I think that's actually put a little bug in the back of my brain somewhere, you know, to help that guy and people like him.
Kennedy figures the worst of being locked in has to be the inability to communicate. He knows that Johnny's brain still works, so he wonders, could he teach Johnny to control a computer with just his thoughts? First, he has to be able to connect with Johnny's brain. Kennedy designs a special hollow glass device that will accomplish two things. One, when it's planted in Johnny's brain, new nerve tissue will grow through it. Two, wires inside the device will conduct signals from the new nerve tissue to a recorder outside Johnny's brain. Kennedy calls his new invention the Neurotrophic Electrode. The question is, will it work? Kennedy starts experimenting with the rats in his lab, implanting his new electrode in their brains.
The surgery had to be developed, and it was done under the microscope, so that makes it more difficult. You have to be good with your hands. But everything I used was biocompatible, so I didn't think it would be rejected.
After 1 week, he checks on the rats, and it's good news. New nerve tissue has indeed grown through the hollow electrode, and it's sending signals to Kennedy's computer. The first step of his experiment is a success.
After I studied the rats and realized that this electrode was working, I was absolutely delighted. I knew that I just had to keep going, no matter what.
After a lot of careful development, Kennedy is ready to implant his electrode in a human brain. But now he needs permission from the most important person,
Hello, Johnny. My name is Dr. Philippe Kennedy.
patient Johnny Ray.
We may have a way to help you communicate again. It's a new procedure. It involves a brain-computer interface.
Now, the crucial question.
Would you be willing to give the neural connector a go?
One blink means no. But two mean yes.
Good man.
Johnny was a very brave guy, and he knew that it might never do him any good per se, but he knew that at least he would be part of an attempt to make that connection.
On August 5th, 1997, Johnny is wheeled down to surgery, and Philip Kennedy is on pins and needles.
It's a huge amount on the line. If we made a mistake at that point, him having seizures, having a bleed into his head or something, that would probably end the whole research.
In the operating room, the surgical team implants one of Kennedy's electrodes in Johnny's motor cortex, the part of the brain that controls body movement. Johnny makes it through the surgery with no problems at all.
While we're waiting a few weeks before recording, the brain is very busy growing neurites, little processes, into this tiny container.
It takes 2 weeks for new nerve tissue to grow through the electrode in Johnny's brain. And now, the new nerve is sending out signals.
That's very encouraging.
Kennedy and his team begin to record them. Next, Kennedy uses a computer program he's created to turn those signals into commands the computer will understand. At last, Kennedy and his star pupil are ready for final exams. This is the big moment. It will tell Kennedy whether his invention actually works.
Johnny, now think about moving your arm.
Johnny follows orders. When he thinks about moving his arm, his thoughts should trigger signals from the new nerve in his motor cortex. The electrode will transmit those signals to Kennedy's computer. The computer is programmed to interpret the signals as a command to move the cursor on the screen. Kennedy holds his breath. And there it is. The cursor is moving. His electrode is doing exactly the job it's supposed to.
Very good.
Then he had, like you would have with your mouse, you can move it across and down or all around the screen. And so once you have that, then all you need is a click. So we provided that from a little muscle activity on the side of his neck.
Soon, Johnny is spelling out words on the computer. One day, he even surprises the great inventor.
So he spelled my name. At that point, that was the eureka moment. I said, this guy has control of his computer now.
Kennedy is now trying to use his neurotrophic electrode to restore actual speech.
We asked ALS patients if they wanted restoration of their hand movement or speech. And of course, it's always speech, because that's so much more direct. And if you can speak, you can control a computer. And you control your environment, interact with people at a much more natural level.
No question, he's done more to open doors for the locked in than just about anyone else. Other inventions of the decade. 1997, Deep Blue. Along comes the IBM machine that finally confounds chess genius Garry Kasparov. His score? 1 game out of 6, and a few sour grapes.
And I don't think this machine is unbeatable.
That same year, the MP3 player. You can now transfer your music files through cyberspace. Who knew thousands of songs could fit into something this small? Point it, shoot it, share it. Talk about living in the moment. It's the camera we always have with us. And the first big step to creating it is thanks to a software geek who does his best work under pressure.
I'm Philippe Kahn. My wife is in labor.
Yes, right this way.
It's June 1997 at a hospital in Santa Cruz. Philippe Kahn might be late for the most important product launch of his life, the birth of his first baby. Philippe is known for firsts in the computer world. His specialty is making devices work together. He was the software guy who figured out how to synchronize personal digital assistants with computers. Philippe may be a whiz in the computer world, but he's totally out of his element in the maternity ward.
Just go.
We had been to the Lamaze classes and all these type of things, and the classic thing happens, you know, you say, okay, breathe, relax, and immediately Sonia turns to me, why don't you mind your own business and do your thing? I know what I'm doing.
Philippe camps out in the waiting room, where he unloads all the latest technology. Digital camera, cell phone, and laptop computer. He plans to announce the birth of the baby to everyone he knows.
You know, we figure out that we do what people do, which is send an email saying Sophie is born, she's 5 pounds 6, whatever she's saying, and she's in good health and all that. That's what we were planning to do. And then suddenly I said, oh, maybe I could do better.
Philippe decides to make a bigger splash by taking a photograph of the new baby and sending it along with the email. But he's got one big problem. At this point, there's no wireless internet in public places, and he can't find a phone jack outlet for his computer anywhere.
Hello? Oh, hi, Grandma.
He's about to make a promise he may not be able to keep.
I'll get you the photo. I promise. All right, bye.
Now Philippe is obsessed with announcing the birth instantly. And suddenly, he gets an idea. His cell phone can't connect to the internet either, but it does run on a cellular network, which is wireless. He thinks maybe he could send the photo through his phone to a website on his computer at home. It's always connected to the internet.
And the whole idea was to be able to take a picture, create a link on a website wirelessly, upload the picture, and then send automatically emails to about 2,000 people who were on my mailing list.
Sonia?
It's crazy to think Philippe can make this new technology work in time for the birth, but that's never stopped this guy before. First step, he writes a computer program into his laptop that will teach his phone how to send photos through the cellular network.
The key is software. You got to build software. So there's a little bit of embedded software that talks low level. And then the software, the server software really, that is able to take that picture, put it automatically on a website at the time, and then generate those links dynamically and send emails, you know, to my whole list automatically so that they receive an email. It tells them, you know, Philippe sent you a picture of the birth of Sophie who was blah, 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 blah. You know, click on this hot link and it'll get you to the picture.
Next step, he has to be able to hook up all 3 devices to one another: camera, computer, and cell phone. Philippe begins the fastest soldering job of his life. He figures he must be down to the wire. And sure enough.
Mr. Kahn, it's time.
It's been 18 hours of hard labor. But Sonia and baby Sophie are ready to test Philippe's invention. He snaps a photo and likes what he sees. He hurries to send the picture using his phone. First, he transfers the photo to his laptop computer, like he always does. Then, with his phone connected to his laptop, he puts the new program to work, loading the photo and the email announcement into his phone. His phone sends them through the cellular network to his computer at home. The home computer is programmed to automatically send out the email and a link to the photo. Philippe waits anxiously to see if his new system works.
Hello? Grandma, you got it? Yeah. She's beautiful. Yeah.
That day, fundamentally, two things were born to me, Sophie, which is really important, and probably the camera phone, and so she's the camera phone baby.
Philippe's camera phone is a clunky predecessor to the sleek devices of today, but it causes a lot of geek envy at the time.
Many times you do these things, you're not sure what you're really creating. And then people, and this is exactly what happened, because what happened is that once 2,000 people got the picture of the birth, I'm going forward, and the thing, I get these emails back, say, how do you do that? We can see you're doing that in real time. Wow, this is cool, can I have one?
Today, the camera phone is now one of the most popular gadgets on the planet. Anyone can shoot and send photos or videos instantly to any place in the world. They can do it because technology genius Philippe Kahn is one very determined guy. Other inventions of the decade. 1998, the stem cell, a multi-purpose lifesaver. It can transform itself into any other kind of cell to repair damaged parts of the body. That same year, the BlackBerry, a computer-like phone with an easy-to-use thumb keyboard. How do you land a spacecraft on Mars? Bounce it off the rocks, of course, on a monster airbag made of just the right stuff. A risky idea, but it works. All because one junior space engineer knew a good idea when he saw it. It's 1992 in NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California. Tom Rivellini is only 24, but he's been asked to head up a team on a very tough assignment. NASA is sending an exploratory mission to Mars. But there's one hitch. It has to be done on an extremely tight budget. American taxpayers are fed up with the space agency right now. There was the Challenger disaster in 1986. And now, the costly repairs on the almost new Hubble Telescope. But NASA has one very important ally, President Clinton.
We are committed to the aggressive plan we have put in place for robotic exploration of Mars.
The mission is on, and it's called the Mars Pathfinder. A spacecraft will deliver a lander to Mars. Inside will be a free-ranging robotic rover called Sojourner that will roam the surface of the planet, collecting scientific data. The problem is, nobody knows how to land the lander. That tricky job has been handed to Rivellini and his team. Even as a kid, Rivellini wanted to be an engineer, in a reverse kind of way.
I was the classic kid who just takes everything apart. My mom had to hide, the toaster and the things that she didn't want taken apart. She put them on the top shelf so that I wouldn't take them apart.
It's a long way from demolishing toasters to the enormous stakes of this project. Trying to land a spacecraft on Mars is a very dangerous proposition. The first big challenge is the red planet's thin atmosphere.
The atmosphere is so thin that it's not enough to get you to land safely on the surface with just a parachute.
Plus, the Pathfinder will be blasting through space at more than 27,000 kilometers an hour, heading for a disastrous crash landing.
There's rocks everywhere, there's sand dunes, there's mountains, there's hills, there's ravines, and it's like taking your laptop and throwing it out of an airplane, and it's got to land safely in a rock field. So you got to come up with ways of making that happen, and it's really hard.
After an agonizing 3 months, the landing team isn't coming up with any solid ideas. Until one day, Rivellini sees something that inspires him, an old sketch from the 1960s of some weird-looking airbags. He thinks, maybe this could be the way we'll land the Pathfinder on Mars.
So I start flipping it open, and I see this like really, really relevant stuff. It was really cool.
When Rivellini announces the idea to his team, it sounds a bit crazy.
We're going to take Pathfinder and drop it on the surface of Mars and let it bounce like a rubber ball.
The question is, will the NASA bosses buy such a risky idea?
We put in a proposal to headquarters, and it got selected. And that was a very big day for everybody, because up until that point, it was just an idea. It was just a technology task where we developed these prototype airbags. But at that point, it was actually the green light. Hey, we're going to Mars.
The entire NASA team comes up with a 4-step plan for landing safely on Mars. Step 1. As the lander blasts toward the surface of the planet at almost 2,000 kilometers an hour, a parachute will open.
So we're still traveling faster than the speed of sound. We pop open this parachute, and it's a very violent event.
The parachute slows the lander, but only to 300 kilometers an hour. Get ready for step 2. Inflate the airbags. And step 3, set off 3 rear-facing deceleration rockets.
Literally 20, 30 meters from the surface, we light these rockets off, starting off at 200 miles an hour. And again, we was like slamming on the brakes. We'd slow down from 200 miles an hour, basically to a dead stop, 8, 10 meters above the surface.
Step 4, the lander drops and bounces along the surface. It's the riskiest part of the plan, and it's up to Rivellini and his team to get it right. Pretty quickly, they come up with a shape that won't put too much stress on the outer surface of the airbags.
You can imagine a soccer ball, and all the patches, instead of being flat and smooth on the surface, actually bulge out and are curved. So you can inflate it to a higher pressure, or you can use thinner fabrics or thinner materials.
But what kind of material should they use? That's the next big challenge. Rivellini knows the thin nylon of car airbags would never be tough enough.
Because they basically have to push against your face, so your face isn't going to tear the airbag. On Mars, on the other hand, we're smashing into the ground and basically at freeway speeds against sharp rocks and hills and all sorts of uncontrolled surfaces. We had no idea that the abrasion layer was going to be so hard to figure out.
Rivellini and the team try out all kinds of potential materials, with little success. But then they come up with one that looks like a winner, called Vectran.
Fantastic material, very similar to Kevlar, except its flexing properties were much, much better. It was much more capable of dealing with repeated folding and bending without breaking and getting weaker.
But when the airbag team put several Vectran models through the grueling set of tests, every single time they get disastrous results.
It was a terrible, terrible thing. It just shredded our airbags like they weren't even there. All of our different concepts, none of them work.
Time is running out. There's still a year before the launch, but it takes almost that much time to build and test a new set of airbags. Worse still, the launch date can't be moved. the rocket will only have enough energy to make it to Mars in a certain 2-week window when Earth and Mars are as close together as possible. It only happens once every 2 years.
Okay, nothing's working. You guys go to lunch.
My project manager, every time I went up, he put his arm around me. Rivellini, the whole project's riding on those airbags. You got to make them work.
No matter how thick the layers of Vectran are, the airbags fail the tests every single time.
We had not successfully executed a test from day one. We've never seen a perfectly successful airbag drop test, period.
One day, Rivellini starts thinking back to the airbags that were duds. Some of them actually performed better than others. Suddenly, he realizes which ones they were.
It was the ones where we had more layers. Didn't matter how heavy duty the layers were, the ones that had more layers did better.
Rivellini's team builds a new set of airbags as fast as they can. This one is made out of 5 thin layers of Vectran. And now, the crucial drop test. It's only 2 months before the airbags must be delivered for the launch.
4 seconds.
If these airbags rip apart, the mission is off.
2 seconds. 1 second. Release.
But no need to worry this time. They pass with flying colors.
Good job, folks.
Mars Pathfinder is launched December 4th, 1996.
And liftoff of the Delta rocket with Mars Pathfinder.
It will travel through space for 7 full months and almost 500 million kilometers. July 4th, 1997, Independence Day. The Pathfinder is about to land on Mars. The whole team gathers in the control room and waits for the verdict. Rivellini and the airbag crew are about to live through 6 minutes of terror.
It's both a chain of things that have to happen and a chain of people making all of those things happen. And literally, if any one of those links in the chain doesn't work, the whole mission just fails, it dies. And the airbag technology really was one of the very last links in that chain.
There are no visual clues to go by, only special tones to tell them whether each stage of the landing is successful or not. The first few tones come in. But until Rivellini hears the special tone telling him that the lander has bounced to a stop, the whole mission is still in jeopardy. Finally, it comes. The landing is a success.
It was just a tremendous sense of joy, accomplishment, and satisfaction all kind of rolled into one. And it was one of the best days of my career. It really was.
Next day, the Sojourner rolls off the lander and a new era of Mars exploration begins. In almost 3 months, Pathfinder returns an unprecedented amount of data. Both the lander and the rover keep going much longer than anyone expected. But the Pathfinder mission could never have landed on Mars in the first place if it hadn't been for the brilliance and persistence of Tom Rivellini and his airbag team. And so end the super high-tech 1990s in what was the most innovative century the world has ever known.